Hello, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started here in just 1 minute, give everybody a chance to connect, get their audio and video configured, and we'll start momentarily. All right, and we are ready to go. So good morning. Thank you guys for joining us for our 4th installment of our Navigating Uncertain Times series webinars. Before we actually get into the content today, I wanted to start with a couple of housekeeping items. Today's webinar is going to be about 30 minutes in length. If you guys do have any technical difficulties, please use the chat feature and GoToWebinar, and we will do our best to get you guys some answers and help there. With that being said, far and away, the most common issues we hear from folks are audio-related issues. So if you guys do have any audio-related issues, please use the phone audio as opposed to the computer audio format in GoToWebinar. It'll ask that you just dial into a phone number using your phone, and more often than not, that does resolve issues for folks. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Matthew Beal. I'm a product marketing manager here at Storable, and I'm going to be your host for the webinar series. And today we wanted to start by giving you guys some insight into kind of why we're doing this series. And really, we see it as our responsibility here at Storable to help provide some perspective and insight in the midst of this crisis. And we believe we're kind of at a unique position to do so because of our breadth of our client base. Because we work with over half of operators across the U.S., we have a really broad view of how operators are addressing issues during this crisis. But we also have we have a depth of industry expertise. So with one of the largest teams in the industry, made up of folks that have decades of experience in storage, we have really a deep expertise in a number of areas, both operations and marketing related. And then lastly is our volume resources. So with our relationships and industry associations and partners, we have a unique vantage point that really allows us to see how the industry is addressing these evolving circumstances. And we want to be able to use those to be able to help you guys out. And so before we get started with today's webinar, I wanted to take a quick glance at kind of where we've come from. So last week, Chuck Gordon, the CEO of Storable, gave a State of the Union that was informed by that unique vantage point I referenced before, helping operators both large and small, and also with problems related to operations and marketing. And today, we are very excited to announce that we have 3 very sophisticated operators that are going to be joining us who bring with them a wide array of experience. And they're going to be loaning their perspective on how they're adjusting to this new market that is in this post-COVID-19 world. And then we're also excited to announce that all of the questions you'll be hearing today came directly from you guys, the attendees of the webinar. And so with that being said, if you guys do have questions as we go through today's presentation, we still encourage you to ask them via the questions panel of GoToWebinar. If we do have some time at the end of today's presentation, we'll get to them. But even if we don't, we will still follow up with you over the next week or so with answers to those questions. And then next week, we are going to be having Chuck Gordon, CEO of Storable, he'll be joining us again for a fireside chat. And so keep an eye out for an email on Monday where we'll be announcing our guest speaker there and the topics that they're going to be discussing. Without further ado, I wanted to hand the mic over to Chuck, who's going to be the moderator of today's panel. So Chuck, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Hey, everyone. My name is Chuck Gordon, and I'm the CEO of Storable. Very excited to be here with all of you today. We have a fantastic panel of expert self-storage operators to talk through the issues that you wanted to talk about. We took questions all week and we consolidated those, and that's what we'll be running through today. But first, let me introduce our panelists. We have Ballard from Universal Storage Group, headquartered in Atlanta with 65 locations in 14 states. We've got Raheem Amer from Devon Self-Storage, headquartered in Emeryville, California with 42 locations in 13 states. And then we have Melissa Stiles with Storage Asset Management, headquartered in York, Pennsylvania, with 218 locations in 28 states. So a lot of great experience among the 3 of you, and thank you again for joining us here today.
My pleasure.
Excellent. So one of the things we noticed is last time we did the webinar, the last roundtable, everyone was really wanting to talk about kind of how are people handling contactless move-ins? Are we staying open or not? Now we've kind of moved past that, and the majority of the questions were around what's going on with people paying. Are our tenants paying or not? What are you doing about collections? What are you doing about the people who aren't paying via auto pay? And a lot of questions related to that. So that's going to be the bulk of what we cover today, in addition to some marketing questions. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it and talk about how successful were you guys with your auto pays and general collections at the start of April? And let's start with Ann.
Well, I did pull some data for you, and our ACH payments were ahead of last year. Let's just reconnect here real quick.
There you go.
Our ACH payments were ahead of last year. Our check payments were down slightly. Our cash was way down, of course, because we're not accepting cash now. But thank goodness, our credit card receipts were ahead of last year for the same week. So we were glad to see that.
Got it. Okay. So no major overall shift.
No, I did see, for example, with regard to collections, those were the stats, but other key performance indicators have definitely showed change.
Got it. Okay. How about you, Raheem?
Yeah, same thing. We were about 4% ahead on our auto pays. And let me paint the right picture for you guys. When I joined the company about a year or so ago, we were sitting at 28 overall auto pay. And over the course of 2019, we had a very laser focus on trying to increase our auto pay percentage. And going into April, we were sitting at almost 60% as an overall company. And I think that sort of helped us hit that going into April. We're actually coming out ahead on our collections. I think it's definitely something that we put into place way back in 2019. It's sort of coming into fruition now.
Got it. That's great. And so did you see anyone pulling off of auto pay?
No, we actually saw a reverse. We had a proactive approach going into April. End of March, because we were already shut down, we actually had our managers reach out to customers that had never been on autopay and said, hey, because we're practicing social distancing, this would be a great time for you to jump on this bandwagon. And we would say that out of the 10 calls, half of them opted into that autopay system. So we saw a big bump up right at the end of March. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. And how about you, Melissa?
Yeah, our auto pay stayed exactly the same. We didn't see anyone pull off. Obviously, overall, our ARs are a little bit up just because we stopped auctions, which we'll get into. But auto pays and the normal revenue stayed almost the same.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. That's a good sign, obviously. Now, what are you guys thinking you're going to see in May, though? Because, of course, last week's question was, what's going to happen to all the auto pays and people paying in April? And it seems like that's gone okay. I haven't heard anyone say that something bad has happened. So now everyone's saying, well, what's going to happen in May? What's your gut instinct there? We'll start with you.
Yeah.
Raheem, this time.
Yeah, I would say we're going into uncharted waters there, right? So, self-storage seems to be lost sometimes. People forget about us. They put their stuff in storage and then they just forget, especially if they're on auto pay. And as we go into May and June, and especially when this stay-in-place orders get lifted, I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of those move-outs and people aggressively moving in a different direction. So April is not what we're concerned about. We're more concerned as we approach May and June.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
You agree?
Yeah, although we saw rent collections go up 1.6% year over year for the first 9 days of April. However, we also saw the units over 30 days go up by 9%. So I think most of us agree we've stopped our auctions. We're case by case managing the delinquents and all of that. But I think May we're going to see a drastic difference in those numbers.
Interesting. So Melissa, how are you actually handling delinquent customers right now?
Yeah, so actually we cut our automated text and calls in half. So we used to have a very automated program, and we started doing personal calls to the managers, and that's been really well received. And I think a reason why our collections are actually not hurting is because of the personal calls, the customers appreciating that. And also, it's not part of our normal strategy, but we started accepting like partial payments, like weekly payments, as long as, again, on a case-by-case basis, but as long as they, had a total that they could be caught up by the next month. But we started doing the personal calls and those kind of things, I think really has helped our collections stay the same.
Got it. And are you even accepting cash or check?
We are in some states because they said that in some states we operate in that you can't be completely cashless, but we are closed to our customers, so they have to put it in the drop box. We prefer that they pay online or go on auto pay, but they can put checks in the drop box. Not a lot of cash just because our office is closed, but we can't say that we don't accept cash.
Got it. Is that the same for you, Raheem?
Yeah, we accept all forms of payment so far, but as I said, we're trying to push our customers towards the auto pay payment or at least the online payment option.
Got it. And you said you're not doing cash, right?
Well, we have a no cash rule, although there are still some customers who, they make up that 12% of the smallest unit users with the lowest incomes, and they're still going to pay in cash. It came up yesterday at one of our stores, so in the design, we always ask for a drop box slot in the glass front door, but owners sometimes leave it out. Well, it's become very critical to have that drop box slot. So like everything, we want managers gloved up collecting mail, let it sit 3 days, same with cash and checks, and then we process them. We want our managers to stay safe above all. But without a drop slot, the manager, we told her, just leave some envelopes outside after they leave, glove up, go get the envelope. We're not going to give anybody change or anything. So we'll take, like Melissa said, for the first time ever, partial payments. And I think Melissa really hit on the crux of our whole operation scheme for all of us right now is we want that customer to stay in touch with us because we're going to be facing on a case-by-case basis extremes of every nature. And it's going to be based on their previous history and have they stayed in touch with us, and then we're going to work through it with them. Because I think we have no other choice. To do otherwise would just to be hard-hearted and no customer service and no thought to the current situation. So I think all of us would agree that that communication with customers is probably the key to operations right now.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. And so you're basically saying that in cases where the customer is responsive, you're talking to them, they're engaged, you will figure out a way to work with them.
Right.
Absolutely.
We're still letting late fees accrue, but of course not auction fees and no auction processing. So even though those late fees are accruing, the managers to look at the history, make a good business decision, work out a plan. Because a plan is better than losing your customers, So it's everybody's goal.
Yep. Melissa, is that similar to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, we are still accruing late fees, and we gave the managers a little bit less constraints as far as credits that they can waive as well on a case-by-case basis. We do trust our managers can make great business decisions, like Ann said. So yeah, exactly the same.
Got it. How about you, Raheem?
So we're doing a little bit differently. For April and May, we have taken all late fees off the table. So we're not even charging late fees. And we have communicated that to the customers that we're not doing any rent increases. We're not charging late fees. We want to work with them and be proactive and be as customer-centric as possible.
Got it. And I'm very curious, what kind of response have you gotten to that communication?
Yeah, we've gotten a very good positive response, right? Especially with reviews and feedback from customers that they like the proactive approach that we're making.
That's great. But even when you did that, that still didn't cause a lot of people to not pay.
Correct.
It's good. This is a very good sign. Okay. And then
it becomes more of a psychological barrier, right? Because now you're doing something for them, so they have to do something back for you.
Yep.
Makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's a good point. And so lean procedures, are you guys just completely on pause, or what's the plan there? Why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah. I think that same thing right across the board is we've stopped all of our lean process and all of our auctions. We put everything on pause till May 31st at this point.
Got it. And what's your thinking around like what will need to happen to start that process again?
I think first and foremost, what we're looking for is for everybody to get back out and about, right? So when the stay in place orders are lifted and people can start moving around, I think that gives us the flexibility to throw our arms around at that point. So we're waiting for those orders to come in, and again, they're saying that at this point they're looking at the first week of May, and from lips to God's ears at this point.
Got it. How about you, Ann?
Yeah, I think we're looking into June at the earliest before we can think of starting to look at reverting to a more normal operation. But even then, I think we're going to have 120 days of trailing work to do sort of get things back to normal. So I think we're looking at probably the beginning of September before we washed through all of this and gotten back to a more normal sort of process. I don't see us starting auctions until midsummer at the earliest.
Interesting. How about you, Melissa?
Same. We're waiting the stay-at-home orders, people getting back out, people getting back to work to kind of make a decision. But right now they're postponed.
Got it. It's a scary prospect that things won't be back to normal, even just operationally, until potentially September. It's a crazy world. Okay, so how about one question that came in that I thought was an interesting one is, what are you doing with delinquent tenants in terms of overlocking? Are you locking them out or not?
Yeah.
We are.
All of you?
Yeah, we are in most states. There are a few states we operate in that we're not allowed to, such as Massachusetts. So we've had to change our operational procedures, but we're still overlocking in the states that allow it.
Got it. Raheem, you?
So no, same thing, right? Just to be a part of that customer-centric and creating that customer-centric environment. We're not overlocking people. We're not doing anything. We're giving them the flexibility to do what they need to do.
Got it. Okay. And Ann, you are?
We are overlocking.
Yeah. Interesting. It will be, everyone should be taking notes of what our customers do during this time, because it's a very fascinating experiment that you would never, ever be able to do any other time.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's going to be very curious to see if, if Raheem's approach yields something different than taking, the more traditional overlocking approach. We'll have to circle up in 6 months and see what happened. Okay, so those were kind of the main collections and lean related questions that we had. Let's jump into marketing real quick. So what are you guys doing on the marketing front? Has anything changed? Have you noticed an increase or decrease in new rentals? For the sources of new rentals, has that changed? Melissa, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so we have seen a decrease in rentals, about 33% right now for this, looking at this week. And also we've seen less leads as well. But what we've seen too is that our close rates are a little bit bad, and we can talk a little bit about what we're doing then too, is that we notice more people are browsing for storage. So overall, the national trend for Google searches for self-storage is only down 5%, but our leads are down significantly more. So that tells us that people are browsing, but not quite ready to make that decision. And I think that goes back to the stay-at-home orders too. You know, people aren't going out to kind of move into their storage unit yet, so they're definitely looking. So one thing we're talking about internally and trying to discuss is how do we adjust our AdWords budget, because obviously that's the biggest spend for most self-storage operators. So looking at how we adjust our AdWords spend, should we adjust it to capture leads later when people are actually moving in, you know, late summer, or do we leave them as they are now? So kind of where we are in our market. Yeah.
And how about you?
Well, that very discussion Melissa mentioned about the keeping up the pay-per-click spending for the AdWords came up with us a couple of weeks ago, and our leadership team agreed, no, do not cut it, because that was one of the first reactions. You know, absolutely don't, because we're out there, all of us, our fiduciary responsibility to manage properties and put money in the pockets of the owners is pretty serious. So our for the first 9 days of April, our move-ins were down significantly more than Melissa's. I didn't know if she was measuring just those first 9 days or year to date, but it took a pretty big hit. But move-outs were also down by 25%. And what we found in the marketing was that the phone leads were down 34%. The web leads were up, of course, 5.5% year over year. Of course, the walk-in leads are down by 56%, and the square foot leads are down by 20%. So knowing that we have a smaller supply to work with, having each of those managers, we did some unique things to help, because we can't touch and we can't be with each other. We put Ring doorbells in all the stores. We gave a cell phone to every single manager in case they can't be in the store, they could still be remotely operating the store. The managers right now are all locked in their offices, of course, but we want them still giving that personal service. So yesterday, based on signs we saw at our competition, mainly the REITs, we changed our front door sign to say, yes, we're here to serve you, instead of all these negative virus related images on our front doors. So now it has a smiley face on it, and, you know, press this button or call this number and we'll still give you all the service that you need. So I think reminding customers that, yeah, we've got to take care of them. But specifically on the marketing, Chuck, you know, we no longer can send the managers out doing marketing calls. We can no longer have events at the store, all right? So our constant contact e-blasts are very critical, and then the manager's personal contacts. But I have a couple of managers that I talked about yesterday who are using Zoom to hold online meetings with other small businesses instead of having meetings face-to-face, and then Alignable to also do the same thing, to have online contact with other local businesses. How can we serve you? You know, all of those things. And just making sure the website is as robust as possible, and daily scraping prices to look at what comps are doing and adjusting online promotions. So marketing has definitely changed, but it's still very robust and very critical.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's a lot of different things going on there. I'll just add real quick before we get to you on this, Raheem. Since you mentioned Sparefoot, and I'll just kind of tell you guys what we're seeing just on a global Sparefoot level. It's been a insane roller coaster. The middle of March, it went up. It was probably up like 15% year over year prior to March, and then it went up to 45% up year over year, which we think was largely due to college students. And then it came down, and now it went all the way down to about minus 15%, and it's basically been holding there for a week. So some stability is good, but that's kind of seems like where it's settling in. So Raheem, how about you on marketing?
Yeah, same thing. Our online traffic has increased. We're actually flat year over year rentals. Back at the beginning of this year, we actually launched a new website. So in 2019, we were working on upgrading our website, and right in the beginning of January, we launched it. And immediately we saw a 300% increase in traffic flowing to our website. Wow. And I think that sort of has resulted in us flattening out. And even with the downtick in traffic, we're at least even on year over year rentals. But going back to what Annie said, I think, there's a lot of negative signage that we're putting on our doors. Stop, do you have a cough? Do you have fever? Do you have this? Do you have that? Don't come in. We're practicing social distancing. I think it's a negative connotation and creates a negative atmosphere. And we opted to go in a different direction, just like Annie did. And we put signs, colorful signs on our doors saying that, yes, we're open, call this number or go to the website. We're not, the doors are not open, but at least we're attracting customers because we are seeing a drop in walk-in traffic. And we want to make sure that people are not walking up to the door and instead of reading a big, complicated sign, they're just turning around and walking away. So we wanted to direct them to, hey, make a phone call so we can have a conversation over the phone with you. And so we've sort of opted to go in that direction, and I think we're seeing at least flatlining on our sales on year over year.
Got it. Melissa?
Yeah, I'll add to that. Sorry, Chuck. That even in our AdWords, ad copy and those kind of things, we're using that messaging too, that we're still open, we're still here to help you. We're just helping you in a different manner, like with your contactless rentals online, etc. So yeah, same thing as echoing those two is that across the whole marketing strategy, we've changed to a more customer-centric approach to use Raheem's words.
Yeah, marketing overall is going to be changing, right? So we're going to see a lot more traffic coming through the website than the walk-in traffic. So if your website is not robust, you have not upgraded it in a long time, this is the time where you need to invest in your website, because if the traffic is not coming to you, and just like Annie and Melissa said, you can't go back on your pay-per-click. This is a time where everybody, if they're looking for stuff, you want to make sure you're there and they're going to be able to connect with you. So this is not the time to pull back on ad spends. This is not the time to spend. This is the time you want to make sure that your ad budget stays. Cut back on something else, but that's got to stay.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you set me up for a shameless plug. If you don't have an upgraded website and you need a new website, call your Storable sales rep.
That's right. I think that's the global message.
There you go.
If you're not taking payments, rentals, paperless leasing, a website that truly has great functionality, you're getting left in the dust. So get out there and get a new website.
Yeah. And there's a couple of free websites that you can tag into to find out how your website is doing. So I'll give you some of those recommendations. You can tap into Hotjar, and it gives you what the customer is doing when they land on your website. You can sort of see the activity of the customer, where they're spending their time or where they're not spending the time. If they're not going over to that reserve button or the rent button and there's no activity there, there's a problem. They can't find your phone number. It sort of follows the life of a customer, exactly what they're doing when they land on your website. So utilize Hotjar on your website, trying to find out how your website is doing. MailChimp is another one that if you want to try to capture email addresses from customers so you can go and remarket them, utilize MailChimp, another service out there. And a third one out there is Uber Suggest. You can sort of see what the traffic, how much traffic you're actually getting on your website. All of these are free services that you can utilize right now just to see how your website is doing.
That's awesome. Those are great tips. Thank you, Raheem. And Melissa, let's close out with your last comment here, since we're about to be out of time.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add too, with your online rentals, and it's because it's so customer centric and we're trying to close every single lead, is to make sure your managers understand how the online process works too. Have them go through it or a training video. The more that they're able to help the customer, I think the better the close rates, obviously. So where we're getting smaller leads, it's so much importance are placed on how our managers are doing. Even though it's not a walk-in, they still are helping them over the phone or through email. So make sure that they understand how your website works as well.
That's a great point. Raheem?
One more thing. Yeah, on what Melissa just said, it's very imperative that at this point we also talk about the benefits of no contact rental. We sort of say no contact or contact free or touchless rental, but we don't really explain to a customer how that benefits them. So make sure that your website is talking about that, your managers are talking about that. Talk about the benefits of how it helps the customer.
That's a great point. Okay, well, thank you guys very much, Melissa and Raheem. This was fantastic. We really, really appreciate your time today. I'm going to hand it back over to Matt to close us out.
All right, thank you guys. All right, just to confirm, can you guys see the presentation again?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful, thank you. So yeah, hey, just wanted to take a quick moment to thank the panelists, everybody for sharing their guidance today. I believe I speak for everyone when I say that was incredibly helpful insights that you guys provided. I love even like the positive tinge that all of you are providing to be able to help kind of your community during this time of need. So just want to stop and say thank you guys. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
One last thing we wanted to share specifically for our Storable clients that are attending today is last week we announced the launch of these resources, but it bears repeating again, that we released some best practice articles for folks using storage software, SiteLink software, our SpareFoot Marketplace, and also our storage website products. So if you use any of those, we would highly recommend you go to blog.storable.com. We've put together a cohesive resource that will help you solve the unique business challenges that are presented by COVID-19, and specifically using things that are already available to you today in those products. A lot of the things you guys heard covered today will definitely be included in there, so you can learn how to do that with your products. But then that concludes today's webinar. So if you guys do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out at webinars@storable.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But just wanted to end with a final note that, you know, guys, these are unprecedented times. It's really more important than ever that we're taking care of one another. We're going to continue to do our part by driving innovation and sharing information with y'all. But if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us here at Storable, and we'll do what we can to help you guys out. But you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you at next week's webinar.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.